Coming up on episode 45 of Omnivore, searching for comfort in 2025 flavor trends, prioritizing food safety in the R&D process, and building bridges to reclaim trust in science. This is Omnivore, from the editors of Food Technology Magazine and the Institute of Food Technologists.
This episode of Omnivore is brought to you by IFT membership. Connect with our diverse community and discover a world of new opportunities. Explore the benefits of membership at ift.org/membership.
Welcome to Omnivore from IFT and Food Technology, where each episode we explore the intersection of business, science, and technology in the global food system. I'm Bill McDowell. Each year, Food Technology's editorial team reaches out to a range of experts for a taste of flavor trends on the horizon for the coming year. Based on this year's conversations, it's pretty clear that flavors that lift moods and offer a respite from stress are what consumers appear to want and even need. Food Technology's Deputy Managing Editor Kelly Hensel recently chatted with Philip Saneski, executive chef at Good Eating Company, about some of these flavor trends, what he's excited to see develop over the coming year, and how he keeps his finger on the pulse of what's trending.
I wanted to start out by talking a little bit about what you do and your role at Good Eating Companies.
So I'm one of many executive chefs at the Good Eating Company, part of Sodexo. I oversee menu development, production, training, food safety, and just about everything in between, operations, supply chain, and whatnot. Typical week is, we are mostly a breakfast lunch program, the location that I oversee and lead. And so, we're early mornings to about mid-afternoon, and, there's room for like special events. We have different themed happy hours like each month based off the types of holidays or the types of, communities we want to celebrate like each month.
And I know in the comments that you gave us for the article, you mentioned the trend of spicy and I know that I think in last year's forecast, we talked about spicy, spicy
Nice.
combos.
Sweet.
Yeah. But it does seem like it's not all about the heat level anymore. It's kind of this sophisticated flavor pairings. And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about some examples that you're seeing and what you're excited about with this trend.
Yeah, totally. I think it's a trend I'd like to continue to see more of. Things are really good when they're spicy, but they're even better when they have like this, what you called sophisticated flavor, which to me is sometimes like a progression of flavor that you get like this experience more than just like, oh, it tastes like X, it tastes like Y. It's spicy and tangy, like, muhammara, like a charred bell pepper, typically toasted walnuts with pomegranate molasses. So it gives it like, sort of three layers of flavor. I really like the play of spicy and smoky, especially like tapping into like Latin American cuisine. So things like chamoy, which is like a char apricot, chili, like based sauce. I've been seeing a lot of chipotle and tamarind a lot on menus, especially here in the Bay Area. So it's sort of like spicy and tangy, smoky at the same time. I love like spicy and nutty. So like Spanish romesco and Oaxacan mole. So kind of typing into like, different types of regional cuisines. Mole pipián is another one that has like it's like pumpkin seed and sesame seed based, and it's really like toasty, but also has like serrano and poblano and jalapeno chilies like added to it.
Wow.
And then kind of tracking to another part of the world, like I love to see like ginger to me has a really good spice, but it's like ginger and herby, and I get really excited for those kinds of flavors. So like ginger lemongrass, or something like using like kaffir lime, so sort of lime, but also has like another aroma to it. So I think the consumer palate is just wanting more experiences that they can like channel like within one bite or one or two bites. And so the mass of us catering to these highly sophisticated, increasingly knowledgeable and globally aware consumers, it makes it so that they're really open to trying a lot more new flavors regarding spicy and something beyond just sriracha.
And you mentioned a couple in there that made it into our forecast this year. Lemongrass, obviously, anything smoky and charred is definitely like,
right.
We're seeing a ton of it. And I think that smoky charred plays into what you talked about too with vegetables coming
Definitely.
even more front and center. And obviously, it's been kind of a trend over the years, and I definitely see it increasing where it's like center of plate and exciting preparations. So what are some of those, and you may have talked about them already, some of these preparations for vegetables that really allow their flavor to shine and that you are excited about?
Yeah. So, on one end, there's vegetables that are the base for a lot of sauces. So, we mentioned muhammara, like harissa, another one from that region of the world in North Africa that I really like. It's like a red bell pepper, preserved lemon, like base sauce. But something that like when you're eating it, it's like, oh, this is actually like, a vegetable and not even having to realize it. Gochujang and Korean barbecue is one that we've been seeing, like already in the market, pretty popular. But I love that one because it's sort of, it's like, it has like the umami behind it too, like whether the brands or manufacturers are using fermented soybean paste, or if they're adding like miso to it. I think that's a really cool trend that we're going to continue to like see more of. So I think just continuing to lean into like those hyper regional cuisines, specifically hyper regional globally inspired cuisines. For me, I see like ube a lot in the Bay Area, and then tapping into like, what's exciting with ube to enhance the flavor of it, like ube and like pandan. Typical like Southeast Asian leaf that you can see in anything from sweet to savory applications. And I love I've been seeing this explosion in like fine dining Indian restaurants, and I really love the trend that they use where their vegetables are such a big part of their cuisine. But also like one flavor combo is saag, which is like a spinach based sauce. And it typically has like Kashmiri chili and garam masala and a lot of like really, really toasted spices. But it's interesting to think of like, well, what if eating vegetables is a sauce that was like your protein, and then, eating with like paneer or eating with like other, tofu. Yeah, I think that's like a tapping into, spicy but also like spicy and what are you seeing as sort of the highlight of the plate? Like the other side of the equation would be like, I've seen a few restaurants and I've seen some newer packaged goods that use like fermentation techniques and then like have another step to it. So like lacto fermented cauliflower, and then making like cauliflower like nuggets that are like really breaded and almost have like a chicken tender like shreddability like to it. But it's cauliflower and it's highlighting the cauliflower.
So obviously it sounds like you're out and about. You're looking at menus in your area of the world too. How else do you keep up with flavor trends? Like, do you guys talk about it in the office? Are you reading things? What are you looking at?
Yeah, all the time. I'm just curious, like what's new, what's innovative, like what I haven't seen before. Themes around the signals that we see in the market. So for me personally, like having, like a very culinary and chef background, I think that like the Michelin star chefs, they are the tastemakers and the flavor drivers. And ultimately, like those trends trickle down to product development and the retail grocery store aisle. Maybe called something different, like for a mass or a wider, broader audience appeal. But I think that's one that we've seen for a bit. But what's even more exciting is that you don't have to be like a 3 Michelin star chef for a lot of newer restaurant openings that are getting a lot of good publicity for one reason or another. Maybe the chef or the owners are putting like a personal spin on like the cuisine they grew up eating with like a local ethos. So I look at like the different types of awards, whether it's like different magazines, different like the James Beard Award. I look at the new restaurant openings, and I'm always just curious to see, what's on their menus. And then also, I mean, I think, trade shows are just such a good way to see in terms of like ingredients and what up and coming brands are putting on the package. A lot of these brands like bring in chefs, whether they're, fine dining restaurant chefs, and they can be like a part of the product development process. Like getting like chefs involved early, whether you're able to hire one on staff, you have a chef's council, or you have like the relationships where you can kind of work with chefs in a fractional capacity. I think it's like so important to at least get the gold standard, and then scaling up and things always, you make your trade-offs. But I think that really good food scientists and really good culinary product developers can translate some of the chef's ethos and keep that theme like throughout a product, and have like really really cool flavor experience, more than just taste. What we were talking about earlier, not just taste, it's a flavor experience now.
Yeah.
So that's something that I want to continue to see more of.
Philip Saneski is the executive chef at Good Eating Company. Learn more about the flavor trends that Philip and other experts believe will drive consumer interest in 2025 in the October issue of Food Technology. We'll be back with more Omnivore in a moment, but first, this word from our sponsor.
IFT is the convener of the global food system. As a member, you'll cultivate your professional network within our global community, stimulate new ideas with the latest research and trends, and accelerate your growth with expert training and resources. Why wait? Visit ift.org/membership to join IFT today.
Welcome back to Omnivore. I'm Bill McDowell. Food safety isn't just about compliance. It's essential to protecting consumers and businesses. The infamous 2001 E. coli outbreak linked to raw spinach devastated both fresh and frozen spinach sales, while salmonella outbreaks tied to contaminated nut products caused 700 illnesses, 9 deaths, and the shutdown of major producers. Consulting food scientist Rick Stier says many of these problems can be avoided or at least mitigated simply by anticipating them earlier in the process. He spoke with Food Technology's Julie Larson-Brischer on how building food safety into product development up front can prevent costly and dangerous recalls later.
Well, hi, Rick. I'm looking forward to our conversation today on building food safety into the R&D process.
Well, it's something that has to be done. We've had lots of outbreaks over the years. We can't say that they were R&D's fault, but part of R&D's role is to anticipate how products will be handled and produced, and to put those warnings in when they get the product developed. Now, building safety into the product is the role of the R&D department, but you need that top-down support. We need that food safety culture. We need top management saying our role is to produce safe, wholesome, and high-quality foods for the consuming public. And that's the mission of R&D. So what do? Well, make sure your R&D group is properly educated. You send them to a HACCP class. You include one or more people from the HACCP team in the R&D group, so they can be there as a check or balance to the people. And again, understanding biological, chemical, physical hazards, and especially allergens, which is a hot button in today's world.
Yeah, that's right. And so those are some good examples of things that like food safety steps or considerations that R&D can take at that beginning of the process, like during ideation and development, right?
Yep. And of course, the R&D people have to understand their job, which means telling marketing, no, we can't get you a new product within 2 weeks. You want to be, okay, what do you want with the product? Is it going to be a line extension? Is it going to be a new product? Is it something we can make in-house? Is it something we're going to have to go to a co-packer? Can we use a current co-packer? Do we have to get a new one? Now, what do you want out of this product? And of course, you need to look at facilities, your own facilities. Now, there are companies that have a peanut-free plant. They will not allow peanuts to be used as an ingredient. They will not even allow them in the vending machines. So if marketing says, well, we want to do it in the Podunk, Iowa plant, and you say, sorry, that's our peanut-free plant. You have nuts in this product. We don't want to do it there. We need to do a co-packer. We need to do it at another facility. Again, that's part of the safety questions you're going to answer. And if you do get a challenge, what do we do with this? This is a new item. This is a new product. This is a new technology. Well, most companies have a group or a procedure that they call change management. And you want the people who are involved with change management to evaluate that new product, new equipment that might be there. And if they find the risks are too high or the costs are too high, you're just going to say, we need to go elsewhere with this. And again, the R&D people have to be strong enough to look at marketing and say, maybe we can do this, but it's going to take a little while.
Do you have any advice or guidance? Is there any out there for how you might select or source those ingredients with food safety in mind?
Well, companies should have a vendor quality program. And if you're lucky, you can, if the R&D people are lucky, they can build a new product using existing ingredients from existing suppliers. But that's not always the case. They might have to find a new supplier and, okay, they do the R&D work and they say, okay, we're going to make it with this ingredient from this supplier, but they're not on our approved supplier list. So things have to stop. The team that does vendor approval has got to go through the whole step of evaluating and approving that processor, that supplier. And it's got to be approval by factory. You can't just approve company XYZ to be your supplier for this ingredient. You're going to approve the plant in this state, in this city, for that particular ingredient. Why? Well, because things change. I've worked with companies around the world, and one of the examples they gave me of a recall they had to do, which was very expensive, was because they got an ingredient from an approved supplier, but it was another factory as opposed to the approved factory. And the people in the receiving dock didn't know it came in from supplier XYZ. Ideally, if you're going to change something, change a source, change a process, the vendor group's got to be notified by the supplier. You don't want surprises. And again, all suppliers have got to be approved. I worked with one company that had a policy in place that said, well, if we buy less than $10,000 worth of ingredients from a company, we don't need to approve the supplier. Gee, guess which supplier caused a recall? The small company that they only spent a few $1,000s a year with. So they immediately changed their policies after that.
Speaking of advising people about considering how and where the product will be manufactured to help ensure that safer finished product, are there other considerations?
Yeah, well, one of the great tools we have to use now is the FDA's Appendix 1. The title, Hazard Analysis and Risk-Based Preventive Controls for Human Foods Guidance for Industry. FDA has broken this out into 13 categories, ranging from bakery items to ingredients like oils and whatever. And they list the chemical, biological, and process-related hazards. So this is a really good tool for a risk assessment that can be done by the team. And again, FSMA says, thou shalt conduct a risk assessment on each step in the process and all the ingredients, raw materials, and packaging that you're using. So again, it's part of the tool to do the risk assessment. Now, one of the companies I work with, a major multinational, has over 30,000 ingredients in their portfolio. And they conducted risk assessments on each and every one of those ingredients as a prelude to the Food Safety Modernization Act being finalized. They started before the act was finalized because they could see the writing on the wall. But again, this gives the R&D people a nice tool to assess risk.
That's great advice. And here's my last question for you today is, and you might come back around to the education idea that you said at the beginning, but what do you think the most important thing a food company can do to support its R&D and other teams to deliver on those food safety goals?
Top management support, not lip service, but this is our goal. This is our mission. And I've worked with companies and they have very solid mission statements that, the CEO or whatever his title or her title is, says, this is our goal. This is what we do. We want to build great products, but protect the consumer. And again, you might not be able to do it all by yourself. You might need consultants. You might need a process authority. But again, that's the role of the R&D team to identify it. If you're fortunate, you have an in-house PA. You don't have to go outside. And then, of course, the other one that I think is important, if you do go outside or in-house, make sure someone has the expertise to scale up. Doing something on the bench is easy. Scaling it up to even a pilot plant can be a challenge. And to production can be even a bigger one if people don't quite understand it.
Well, Rick, thanks for sharing your advice with us today on Omnivore. It's been a pleasure, as always.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Richard Stier is a consulting food scientist with international experience in HACCP, food plant sanitation, quality systems, process optimization, GMP compliance, and food microbiology. You can check out his article, How to Build Food Safety into R&D, in the October issue of Food Technology. Communicating science to a wary public is getting harder. According to the 2024 Edelman Trust Barometer, 74% of consumers say they're just as likely to trust the opinions of someone like me as they are from an authoritative expert. Charlie Arnot, CEO of the Center for Food Integrity, says in order to break through, scientists need to go beyond the facts and focus more on shared values. I recently spoke with Charlie about how food scientists can bridge the trust gap and make their expertise more relevant for today's public. So Charlie, thanks a lot for joining us on the Omnivore podcast.
Bill, it's great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
According to the 2024 Edelman Trust Barometer, about 74% of people said that the opinion of someone like me has the same level of credibility as a scientist. So why do you think that there's been such a shift in terms of trust, or has there been a shift, I guess? And how do you think that scientists can work with this trend rather than against it?
It's frequently a point of frustration for scientists that they have this technical information that they know is going to be really relevant. It's going to be important conversations around diet, public health, ultra-processed, you name the topic. And science is absolutely essential. But science is never sufficient. And that's part of the equation that we have to help people understand is science is the foundation, but it's not going to be sufficient in building trust. Our peer-reviewed and published model shows that influential others is one of the key elements in building trust. When we did the research back in 2007 to 2009, an influential other was defined as a credentialed expert whose opinion I trust. Today, you would simply take off credentialed expert, and it's simply someone whose opinion I trust. So the evolution of social media, the proliferation of different channels, the ability to find information that supports your existing worldview, all have contributed to the erosion of trust or the reliance on science as kind of the foundation of trust. But it's a huge opportunity in my view for scientists, because scientists can be someone like me. The opportunity is to connect based on values and then introduce your expertise. So we all share common values in terms of wanting food to be safe, wanting it to be produced in a way that enhances our environment, that helps us meet our nutritional needs. We all care about those items and issues. So we can identify with that first and then share information will be much more effective.
In the op-ed you wrote for Food Technology, you referenced Galileo's struggles as a metaphor for these modern challenges. How does that compare to the skepticism that consumers are expressing, especially today when digital media has just accelerated the distribution of information?
So there's always been some level of skepticism based on culture, based on the opinions of those who are in power. But as you noted, what has changed is our communication environment. When I grew up, we had 3 television networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS, and each of us got the same 22 minutes of news every night. And so we had the opportunity to have a common information culture, because the media doesn't tell us what to think, but they tell us what to think about by keeping it in front of us. But now, with the endless proliferation of channels, I can find media that reinforces my existing view that may or may not be science-based.
You actually say that facts in and of themselves really need to be used sparingly. You said they need to be used sparingly like salt. So what do you mean by that? And how does this notion of shared values really play out in practice, especially when you're dealing with an audience that has these deeply ingrained beliefs?
So historically, we've kind of thought of trust as this Pandora's box, and the lock on the box we believed would be opened if we could find the right combination of data or science or facts. What we now know through our research is you have to cross that shared values threshold first, or any information you provide is simply going to galvanize the opposition that someone might have. So let's say, for example, that I don't believe in vaccination, and you come at me with all of the data around why I should vaccinate my children, why it's important for me to get the COVID vaccination, but you just galvanize my opposition because you're reinforcing my position and perspective that science simply doesn't get it, right? Science doesn't understand me and my objection. If you instead engage me in a conversation to say, I can tell you care very deeply about your kids and their health, and I really respect that. I care about my health and my children's health as well. Tell me more about your concerns about vaccination. Now you've established a relationship and some level of rapport. Once you've opened that door and you've been able to connect on values, then you are given permission, not overtly, but covertly, you've been given permission to begin to introduce some information. We tend to want to share everything we know, right? Under the assumption that somewhere in there will be a nugget that will connect with this person. This fact or that fact or the other fact will ultimately be persuasive. When what we know is, once you make that shared values connection, a little bit of information validates you now as a credentialed expert and someone like me who I trust.
You'd mentioned in the article that the importance of listening without judgment as being a key component.
So if they're coming with questions or concerns or accusations about processed foods or overprocessed foods or lack of nutrients or too much sodium or, I can listen for that. And what I hear is, well, this is someone who's concerned about their health. This is someone who is interested in a healthier diet. This is someone who has this concern or that concern or another concern. Because what we hear from people is just the tip of the iceberg. We have no idea what's below the surface in terms of their life experience, what they're dealing with, the challenges that they see, the information they've had. All of that we don't get from that single question. We only get the tip of the iceberg. But if we can listen for a place to connect and then ask questions to better understand what are the underlying motives, what are the values, what's driving this concern, then we have an opportunity to really make a difference and connect with that individual in a way that is meaningful for them, which gives us the opportunity to have influence.
So you mentioned before about ultra-processed foods, because that is obviously the big discussion, the big debate du jour. Based on what you just said, what are some areas where you think that just in terms of driving or managing the discourse where maybe we're missing the mark?
Yeah. So oftentimes, if you are a food scientist, you will come at this as a technical conversation. So someone starts talking about ultra processed food, and you go, well, there's this, that, and the other thing I don't like about the NOVA definition. Well, I may think NOVA's a car, right? It's something that Chevy built several years ago and that I used to drive when I was in high school. So I have no idea what these technical concepts are, but I'm really concerned about overly processed foods because I've heard a lot about them and the potential negative impacts on my health or my family's health. So if we start getting into the technical conversation about ultra processed foods, we've completely lost the public, because that's a technical definition. Oftentimes these conversations are being happen within the dietetic community or within the scientific community or the regulatory community, but they're not happening with the public. And so the public concern is about processed foods. You know, I know the distinction between an apple and a bag of Doritos, but all of that gray area in between is confusing to me. And so what I really want is information that helps me make an informed decision that's best for me and best for my family. So ditch the technical language, help me understand and use language that's relevant to me. Now, one of the things that I hear sometimes is, well, that's dumbing it down. It is not dumbing it down. It's making it relevant. And that's an art, right? That's an art, because all of a sudden now you've made your expertise accessible to me. And that gives me the opportunity to value your expertise in an entirely different way.
So less, more listening and less talking past each other.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we're all guilty of it. In my previous life, I worked for a company that was frequently attacked, and I had all of the scientific data. So immediately when someone started talking, I was going through my mental Rolodex, preparing for my fact-based response, and all I did was alienate people. And so when we began to focus on trust as opposed to defending a position, we found entirely different strategies that are now much more effective.
Charlie Arnot is the CEO of the Center for Food Integrity, a nonprofit organization that applies research, strategic insights, and best practices to build consumer trust in the global food system. You can read more of Charlie's thoughts on better communicating food science in the October issue of Food Technology.
Thank you to this episode's sponsor, IFT Membership. Satiate your hunger for knowledge, connection, and career growth with an IFT membership. Discover the benefits and activate yours at ift.org/membership.
And that wraps up this episode of Omnivore. Thanks again to all our guests and my colleagues at Food Technology. Omnivore is produced and distributed by the Institute of Food Technologists. If you enjoyed today's show and want to learn more about Food Technology Magazine or how to join the conversation by becoming an IFT member, visit ift.org/membership. For more in-depth discussion about innovation in the science of food, check out IFT's other podcast, Side Dish, on the News and Publications page of ift.org. If you have comments or suggestions for future shows, just send us an email. The address is editors@ift.org. For the entire team at Food Technology and IFT, I'm Bill McDowell. Thanks for listening, and join us again for our next episode.